Welcome everyone to our episode 119. Today we have an honored guest, Nisha Hazari, and we are going to talk about catching your sleep to boost your energy. And thank you, Nisha, for being here. I'm going to introduce you. Nisha is a certified physician assistant turned functional medicine health specialist with a mission to change the way healthcare is done. Her passion for medicine began when she witnessed her own father deal with early diagnosis of colon cancer. After completing her BS and MS from UCSD, she went on to work in pharmaceuticals, helping to test new drugs in clinical trials. However, from this, she realized that she wanted a more hands-on approach and went back to school to receive her physician assistant degree. Since becoming a physician assistant, she has helped patients with weight loss surgery, pain management, and cancer diagnosis. Now, after over a decade of practicing medicine the traditional way, she no longer is managing patient symptoms, but as a functional medicine health specialist, treating the root cause so that medicine is no longer necessary. Thank you, Nisha, for being here.
Thank you, David. Thank you so much for having me on. I am, I used to, as you mentioned, practice medicine the traditional way, and I always felt that there was something missing. I just didn't quite feel like I was treating my patients. I felt like it was a revolving door of managing their symptoms, and as long as they took the medicine they would feel okay, and once the medicine stopped working they were back in the clinic again, and so we were again addressing the same issues over and over again, and I never felt like I was helping them truly get better. It was just managing it until the next episode or until the medicine stopped working or something new appeared, and then we would manage that with medicine, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's how traditional medicine works these days. It's so medication focused first, and that's where I found my passion in functional medicine, because it involves actually understanding why you're having the symptom that you're having. Why are you having pain? Why are your labs not functioning properly? Why? What's really the reason behind that headache? And so a lot of these things can be addressed just by looking at imbalances with nutrients and hormones, and our daily lifestyle plays actually a huge role in how we feel. And so that is the transition to functional medicine, is to really focus on root cause medicine and root cause resolution of understanding why you're feeling this way, not just managing it with medications.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, so it's an exciting field. I think it's up and coming. I think more and more people are figuring this out, that they don't want to take medicine anymore to manage their symptoms, and they really do want to feel well from the inside. And so I anticipate it'll become more mainstream, hopefully in the years to come. But I think it's catching its steam now, so it's exciting to be in this area. Yeah.
It is, and I completely agree that physicians need to change the mindset of how they approach health, because several times I have also witnessed that they don't know the body, they don't know
Hmm.
what is happening inside of the body, and well, for me, it's very evident that kind of uh, m- mistake, let's say, in the education system, because
Hmm.
I taught several years, more or less
Hmm.
15 years. I taught biochemistry for
Hmm.
physicians and nutriologists and all of these healthcare uh, personnel.
Yeah.
And I also struggle with them many times because
Hmm.
they know by memory the medications, they know by memory the sometimes the symptoms of the disease,
Yes.
but when you ask them, well, why do you think this is happening? That's
Mm-hmm.
when they blank. That's when they
Mm-hmm.
do.
Yeah.
And I think that if you are a physician, the first line of education should be to know your metabolism, the
Mm-hmm.
biochemistry, the reactions that happen,
Yeah.
and how the body sustains health, no?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you bring up some very interesting points there. And the physician assistant training in the US is similar to medical school, at least the curriculum is. And so, in going through that training, we do a system by system approach. So, let's start with the cardiovascular system and let's study that. And let's study all the things that can go wrong with this cardiovascular system. And then let's talk about the symptoms and then let's talk about the medication. So, it's a very, it's a very identify the symptom approach, right? Let's figure out what's going on, diagnose it, and then let's treat it. And the piece that's missing is why is that symptom appearing, and why what is actually going on in the body that's causing someone to feel this way. And usually, it's not just specific to that particular body area, right? So if you have a headache, it's not, your headache might not be coming, it might not be a result of what's going on in your head. It could be a result of what's going on, say, in your gut or somewhere else. And so, but those are the things that we don't learn in school because, I think there's a lack of understanding around it and lack of time. And there's a real lack of focus around nutrition and health because it's such a band-aid approach of how can we fix the problem to make the patient feel better and then move on to the next patient, right? So I think there needs to be an overhaul, in my opinion, of the entire medical system and how things are approached and how we view disease and treat people. But that I could go on and on about that topic for hours because that's the crux of why I love functional medicine so much.
I know, and actually we can make a segue here
Yeah.
to the sleep issue because I think that activity for me is an activity, sleep, that
Hmm.
people don't even consider it as something that they they need to do. They should have some time a schedule for that, and they should
Hmm.
take care of that activity, no? And as well as sometimes also having a proper nutrition, but sleep,
Yeah.
if you don't have time to sleep, or if you postpone your sleep or
Hmm.
negotiate your sleep every time that you are busy or every time that you are stressed,
Hmm.
usually what is going to happen now?
Yeah, yeah, that's a great question. And we put, as you mentioned, we put so much emphasis on nutrition. You go to your doctor's office and they talk about cholesterol and they talk about low fat foods and blood pressure and heart disease and are you overweight and do you need to exercise more? But nobody talks about sleep. And the interesting part about sleep is that it actually affects all of these conditions that I just mentioned. Sleep, or I guess the lack of sleep, is at the center of so many of our behaviors, our moods, our lifestyle choices, what diseases we're at risk for. And I believe as a society, we all have similar goals, right? We all want to wake up in the morning. We don't want to feel tired. We want to be full of energy. We want to take on the day. We want to get to work, focus on our work, be productive during the daytime. We want the energy to exercise. We want to focus during meetings or when our kids are talking to us. And we want to do all these things and be happy while we're doing them, right? We don't want to be grumpy all day. And it
Mm,
sounds amazing. And who wouldn't want all of these things, right? But the part that doesn't get examined is a role of sleep and how it affects your energy level and how it affects your ability to focus and what your mood is like when you don't get enough sleep, right? A lot of us don't realize that all the things that are driven by the connection between sleep and your hormones and your neurotransmitters, they all work together to make these things happen or not happen, right? If you're not getting sleep. And so the amount of sleep and the quality of sleep that you get plays a huge role in how you feel. Are you going to be grumpy when you wake up in the morning, or are you going to be full of energy, right? That's all dependent on the amount and quality of sleep you're getting and how these hormones are working together with the neurotransmitters to make all of this happen. And, as I was thinking about this topic, I was just curious as to, I was like, is sleep an American problem, or does the rest of the world have it figured out, or who's really struggling? And I realized that over a third of Americans suffer from chronic sleep issues, but that it's actually a global issue. Countries in Asia actually suffer the most. Japan, South Korea, Hong Kong, Singapore, all of these countries actually have people that get the fewest hours of sleep, and that's typically less than 7 hours a night. And it's a result of the busy work lifestyle. People are constantly working, and sleep is just not a priority, right? And
Mhm.
so, as I'm talking about sleep, why are we even talking about sleep? Why is it even important, right? So, I think there's a common misconception that a lot of people think sleep is just a form of relaxation, and so they don't prioritize it, right? I'll do the dishes, I'll do the cooking, I'll do the laundry, I'll do this, and then somewhere at the bottom of that pile, when I've done everything else, and if I still have time left over, I'll go to bed. And I think that's kind of where sleep falls in this spectrum. And the reality is that our body's actually really busy when we're sleeping. In the same way that you plug in your phone, your iPad, or whatever other gadget you have at night to get recharged, sleep is your body's way of recharging. And so there's a lot of benefits to getting a good night's sleep, that your body needs to do. So some of those benefits are restocking your hormones. And hormones are kind of how you live, right? You need hormones for all the activities your body needs to do. And so, like, for example, 75% of your body's growth hormone is released at night when you're not moving around as much. And why do you need growth hormone? Well, you need it to repair your body. You need it to increase your metabolism. You need it to improve your mental and physical health. So it's super important that your body gets a chance to restock that hormone that is so crucial. Or your body needs to process toxins, right? Both your brain and your body. And in your brain, you have what's called the cerebral spinal fluid, or CSF for short. And it's this fluid that's flowing around in your nervous system, your central nervous system, and it flows around the tissues and the cells, and it clears out toxins from the brain, so that when you wake up in the morning, you don't have this fogginess feeling. You can be more clear-headed, it helps you build memories when your brain isn't so infiltrated with toxins.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I don't know if you've ever heard, but some people say, "Oh, to make this important decision, I'm going to sleep on it," right? When they sleep on it, the brain's clearing, the CSF is clearing those toxins. So when they wake up in the morning, they have this mental clarity, and things become more easier to see, and decisions become easier to make. And that's a result of the cerebral spinal fluid doing its job. And
Exactly.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and I was thinking about all of those things that you mentioned just
Mm-hmm.
for sleep, and it is just so easy for people to realize that a bad night of sleep
Mm-hmm.
is immediately reflected either in your cognitive skills, either to
Mm-hmm.
remember things or to be fast in your thinking process or
Mm-hmm.
not be distracted, or also in the energy that you have if you are a person that uh, performs exercise or
Mm-hmm.
any other activity, physical activity, you really can feel it, and you just can think about the night before and
Mm-hmm.
relate that, because I usually go to the gym in the morning. uh,
Mm-hmm.
when I have a very good night of sleep and the quality of my sleep is good, I
Mm-hmm.
don't struggle at all to
Mm-hmm.
do any of the exercise, and I feel
Mm-hmm.
that I have a lot of energy, even though I didn't take any supplements or vitamins or whatever. Just with a good night of sleep, I can do that, and throughout the
Mm-hmm.
day, I feel activated. I feel with attention. I feel quick in my thoughts. But when I have a bad
Yeah.
night of sleep, the day is just really a mess. It's difficult in the gym. It's
Mm-hmm.
difficult to concentrate, and I have more distractions.
Yeah.
And usually by this time of the day, in the evening,
Mm-hmm.
I feel completely depleted, and I don't even have energy anymore to do anything. So
Yeah.
this is just one night. Imagine
Yeah.
people that is just building up on this
Yeah.
time, and they are just desynchronizing all of their
Mm-hmm.
organs, all of their clock,
Mm-hmm.
because that's the question that I would like to ask you also about
Mm-hmm.
the clocks. What happens with people when they don't sleep in terms of this internal system that is the circadian rhythms and the
Mm-hmm.
clocks that the organs have?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, the circadian rhythm that you're referring to is based on our body's internal clock that tells us, okay, it's time to go to sleep. And it's a lot of it is based on, it's got like an evolutionary perspective to it, right? So back in the olden times, when we didn't have all this technology and we didn't have all this light, and when it got dark, it got dark and there was nothing else to do, right? So during those times when it got dark, our bodies knew that it was time to go to sleep. And they didn't have, I'm not going to say we because I wasn't there, but they didn't have alarm clocks that told them, oh, it's 6 o'clock, you have to wake up, right? They woke up to the sunlight. As soon as the sun rose, it was like, okay, it's time to wake up. As soon as the sun set, it was like, okay, it's time to go to bed, because there was nothing else to do. You couldn't, you know, and I equivalent that to people that might like camping, right? Like when you go camping, you sit by the campfire because that's really the only light you have, or you have the lanterns. But after so long, you're like, okay, it's 10 o'clock. I guess I got to go to bed now because we got to get up at the sunrise. We don't have alarm clocks when you're out in the middle of the woods. And so that's how our clock works. And our bodies are actually trained, and our natural biology is to go to bed when it's dark, and then to get up when the sun comes out, and not to depend on alarm clocks. But with modern society and the way things are now, we can be up until 11, 12, and 1 a.m. because we have an abundance of light, right? We have an abundance of stimulation. And I think that's partly at the crux of our sleep issues, is the fact that we have access to all of these things that we didn't have before. And our bodies are not designed to sustain those things. And so when you're focusing on, scrolling through your phone, or your phone's like right in front of you and you're sitting there at midnight, that blue light that's hitting your face or that's hitting your eyes is kind of offsetting your circadian rhythm, because your brain's like, oh, there's light. It's not darkness. It isn't time to sleep, so let's keep going. Let's stay awake. And that's tough, because if you do that, as you said, night after night after night, and then weeks and months, pretty soon you fall into this pattern of staying up late because your brain just doesn't think it's time to sleep, even though it's dark outside and you should be in bed. And I think that's where we need to change our mindset in terms of, you know, shutting things off, right? So shutting gadgets off, unplugging, and stepping back and focusing on our own self care to get us into bed. Yeah,
Yeah. I
yeah.
think, as you mentioned, it's so important to have a ritual to sleep,
Mm-hmm.
to have this more or less 1 hour or half an
Mm-hmm.
hour at least, start just relaxing, to start disconnecting, to start trying to slow down our minds so that we can have or allow the brain to
Mm-hmm.
adjust to this calmness and to this kind of silence, if not darkness still, because
Mm-hmm.
we have these lights, at least
Mm-hmm.
have a softer light, at least have the least amount of devices on, and trying to just read in something that doesn't give you a lot of
Yeah,
interaction in terms of the blue light. And
exactly.
just that change in your schedule, just that change in your rituals
Mm-hmm.
will start to give you the relaxation that your body needs to
Mm-hmm.
go into the first phase of sleep, no?
Yeah,
A-
yeah,
and
exactly.
and I was thinking also about the springtime. Well, here
Mm-hmm.
in Mexico is almost spring. We are
Mm-hmm.
just a few days away from spring, but since March began, uh, I was noticing that, well, here there are a lot of trees outside, and there are a lot of birds and squirrels and just animals that go
Mm-hmm.
with the clock, and
Mm-hmm.
they start making a lot of noise early because
Yes.
they notice the change. They sense
Mm-hmm.
the change. The birds start singing, and you listen to the birds, and they are. It is just 5 a.m. and they are
Yeah.
singing, and that
Yes.
doesn't happen in February, and that doesn't happen in January, and that doesn't
Mm-hmm.
happen in other times where it is colder and
Mm-hmm.
it is darker. So
Mm-hmm.
that's just the way of nature to tell you
Yeah.
this is now a new time, this is now a new season,
Mm-hmm.
and now you can start waking up at 5 probably, or 5:30,
Mm-hmm.
because the sun is almost going out, or
Mm-hmm.
almost. And then,
Mm-hmm.
as you can notice, now it's dark. And
Yes.
that's the time that you should be relaxing or doing activities that doesn't prime your mind so much. And that's the season, no, of nature. And if we allow that season to impregnate us from that,
Mm-hmm.
we are going to regulate our systems, no?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. And animals are sometimes smarter than humans because they know it's time to wind down, where we humans are still going and working until, the wee hours of the night, right? So, um, and I think sometimes there's a bit of a disconnect too, because in talking to people, I think a lot of people just don't understand the mechanism of sleep, right? Why do I have to do all of these things? And I think if you don't understand why you have to turn off your technology, why you have to do the quiet time and the sleep routine, if you don't understand the why and how it's affecting you, then there's less of a chance that you're going to do it, right? People just don't do things they don't understand. And so, in talking about sleep, there's actually a small little gland in your brain called the pineal gland, and it's
Mm.
about the size of a grain of rice. It's super small, but this gland actually secretes melatonin, and I think we've all heard of melatonin. Everyone, takes it at night to help them go to sleep. Melatonin is essentially a hormone, and it allows our body to rest and heal at night. Now, interestingly, the pineal gland will only release melatonin in a dark and quiet environment.
Mm.
So, if you are sitting in your living room with the bright lights of the TV flashing on your face, You've got the blue light from your phone in front of you, then you've got the overhead light and on top of you, and then there's the noise from the TV. Those are not signals to your brain that says it is time to sleep and release melatonin, right? And so again, if we think back to the olden days when there were no devices, it was easy to release that melatonin because the sun went down, there was no extra light, and people went to sleep. And so now, with our devices, it makes it harder. And it's not just melatonin. It's not just melatonin. It's also what we have is called our nervous system, right? And we have two types of nervous system. We have our sympathetic nervous system, which is more popularly known as the fight or flight response. And then we have parasympathetic nervous system, which typically everyone knows it as the rest and digest. And so going back to melatonin, which nervous system do you think the melatonin would be activated in, right? It would be the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest. And so, going back to this evolutionary perspective, if you're running from a bear or you have an enemy that's coming with swords and trying to attack you, you're going to be in sympathetic nervous system mode. That's the fight or flight. And so when you're in that mode, your heart rate goes up, your blood pressure goes up, you're sweating, you're on high alert, looking out for, who's coming to attack me, right? And so your body is not going to say, stop in the middle of this threat and say, oh, it's time to go to sleep. It's 10 o'clock, lights out. No, right? You're in survival mode. Your body's like, we don't have time to sleep. We have to be running for our lives because there's a danger coming behind us. And conversely, if you are resting and digesting, then your body wants to sleep because it is dark, right? So there's this mental shift that happens. Now, obviously, in this day and time, we're not, we don't have a bear attacking us. We don't have, people with, swords coming after us. But we have our modern lifestyle that mimics a similar scenario, right? So if we're exposed to light and we're watching TV, for example, the blue light from the TV is kind of like that stress of the bear coming and attacking us, or the news. If you're watching the news these days, which news is never exciting or good, but it stimulates your mind, right? It doesn't say, oh, calm down and relax. You get worked up. I get worked up when I watch the news these days, and all the things going around the world. So it really gets me amped up. Or if I watch my favorite TV show, if it's a drama, right, and there's a scary scene, that doesn't calm me down. That gets me riled up. It gets my heart rate going. I'm like, oh my God, what's going to happen around the corner, right? So all of these things are stimulating my mind. So it's not just the devices themselves that we need to blame. It's the content. It's the stimulation we're getting from these devices, right? Or how many times have we stayed up late nights scrolling on social media, seeing your best friend on vacation somewhere, and you're like, why am I not on vacation? Why don't I have that body? Why, you're comparing yourself to others. Or, sometimes it's not even that, it's sometimes your own negative self-talk. I'm just not good enough. I just can't get that thing done because I'm not smart enough, or I don't have this. All of these things playing in your mind are reenacting that bear chasing you. They're all things that are putting you in the sympathetic nervous system mode. And when you're in this mode, your body says, there is no time to sleep. That is not a priority right now. So you wonder, like, after watching TV or after scrolling, and then you go to bed and you're like, well, why can't I fall asleep? It's time for bed. I should be able to fall asleep now. And it's like, obviously you had 30, 60 minutes of stimulation right before this. And an analogy I like to give people is, if you need to make dinner, you don't just go into your kitchen and start cooking, right? You have to first make sure you have all first you need to figure out what you're making. Then you need to make sure you have all the ingredients. Then you probably need to do some chopping, right? And to get things ready to actually do the cooking process, right? The cooking process doesn't take long. It's all the prep work beforehand that takes time. And it's the same way with sleep. You can't just say it's 11 o'clock, okay, I'm just going to change into my pajamas, get into bed, and pray that I fall asleep. What about all the prep work? You didn't do any of the prep work to get yourself ready to sleep. And I think that's the key piece that a lot of people are missing. They think that they can just switch everything off, get into bed, and they should fall asleep. And, that's just not the case. You have to prep your body to sleep in the same way that we teach our kids. If you have kids, you might have a sleep routine with them. I know for my kids, every night, right on the dot at 7 o'clock, we do bath, then we do brush, then we change, then we read a book, then we do a song, and then it's lights out. And so their bodies know that as soon as this routine starts, their mind gets ready, their brain gets ready to sleep because that's what's coming at the end of this chain. And yet we don't do this for ourselves, right? Why? Why don't we have this routine, this hygiene, the sleep hygiene for ourselves? And I think that's where we need to focus on the hour before bed that you were alluding to earlier in prepping ourselves to get ready for sleep. Don't have important conversations at night either. A lot of things happen at night. You want to talk about your finances. You want to pay your bills. You want to, have these heated discussions with your spouse, maybe, or I don't know. You save all those things for right before bedtime, and when you do that, again, you're putting yourself into this sympathetic nervous system that's telling your brain, I guess it's not time to sleep. It's time for survival mode. So let's keep going, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's part of the crux of trying to get ourselves ready for sleep. Yeah, that
I,
we're
I
missing.
love I love your analogy of this prepping time and this ritual that starts 1 hour, 2 hours, as I was
Hmm.
mentioning. Ideally, 2 hours, that would be great. But
Ideally, yes.
if people don't have 2 hours, well, at least an hour or half an hour, so that you
Yes.
can start going into this ritual. And it is
Hmm.
just as easy as you mentioned, the cooking example. And also, I also was thinking about the eating example. When you are cooking, when you are preparing things, your mouth is already salivating by watching
Hmm.
the food, by smelling the food, and
Yeah.
that sensation that is priming a lot of enzymes in your body, so that you
Hmm.
can start prepping your body to digest the food and going
Hmm.
into a much better digestion and absorption of the nutrients. That is the same for sleep. This time that you are going to allow when you prep for sleep is the time that your body is going to say, well, this is really a time of relaxation. I can just slow down and and can make the switch to the parasympathetic mode and start
Hmm.
just realizing that it's night, that
Hmm.
is dark, that I I will fall asleep faster, and I will
Hmm.
enter one of the most important phases of sleep, which is the next question. I think that the most important, and I have noticed in my application, in one application that I use to sleep, that is the name of the app is Pillow, and it senses the stages of sleep. The
Hmm.
most important phase, which is deep sleep,
Hmm.
comes right like half an hour or 40 minutes after you fall asleep. And
Hmm.
that's the most, or well, this is one of the cycles that you start. But
Hmm.
this phase is really important uh, to allow your memory to consolidate all of the things that happen during the day. What else
Hmm.
can you tell people about this phase of sleep or the phases of sleep?
Yeah. So yeah, in the beginning, the first 10 to 15 minutes, you're in this light sleep, and then
Mm,
as you get further and further down into the sleep cycle, you go into deep sleep, and then the last phase is REM, which is when you're dreaming,
mhm,
and so one sleep cycle takes about 90 minutes, right? And a lot of people will say, I sleep for 7.5 hours, but I still don't wake up in the morning feeling rested. And so then you have to think back, well, they're probably not getting enough of that deep sleep, right? And so why is that? Well, if your body, again, is in this sympathetic nervous system mode when you're falling asleep, then your body doesn't want you to get into deep sleep. Because if you're in deep sleep and somebody is attacking you, how will you wake up from deep sleep to counter that, right? It's all about survival. And so you might be sleeping 7.5 hours and thinking, oh, I'm doing great, but you're still waking up in the morning tired because you just can't get into the later stages of deep sleep where you're really doing, as you mentioned, the work. Deep sleep is when you are restocking those hormones, when the toxins are being cleared out. And that's when the real work begins. And if you can't calm down your nervous system enough to tell your brain, it is safe to go to sleep. We are not under attack. There is no intruder, right? If you convince your brain of that, then you can get into deep sleep. But a lot of people go to sleep ruminating. They're thinking about their day. They're thinking about all the things that they had to do, they or need to do tomorrow. They're thinking about all the things, the conversations they've had, right? How many times do we go to sleep replaying in our head things that happened during the day? I should have done that. I could have done that. I should have said this. Like, this is what I'm going to do tomorrow. So you're going to bed stressed. And so you're just, in that state of mind, deep sleep is just probably not in your future in getting that super rest that you need. And so you will still wake up feeling quite tired. So it's a shift in trying to get from the sympathetic nervous system to the parasympathetic phase, where you tell your body, all right, it's okay, relax. And then when you get that deep sleep, that's when you really wake up feeling refreshed, energized, and ready to take on the day.
What can you suggest to people so that if they have one of those episodes of rumination, or they just wake up thinking about something that they didn't do, what do you suggest them so that they can fall asleep again and probably catch up one of these deep sleep phases?
Yeah, if it's the middle of the night and you're waking up because you just didn't get into deep sleep and now something has woken you up, and that's the other thing, is when you don't get into deep sleep, little noises are more prone to wake you up. Things that you wouldn't have noticed if you were in deep sleep will bother you if you're not. So the bird chirping outside, or a leak, or whatever it is, you're just more bound to be disturbed by it. And so sleep hygiene, as we talked about, is one thing. Getting out of that sympathetic nervous system into the parasympathetic mode, doing calming activities, meditation, journaling, taking a warm bath or a shower before you go to sleep. I'm not a bath person, but I love a warm shower before I go to bed. So that is helpful. Doing stretches, just simple 5 to 10 minute stretches before you get into bed, or yoga, those types of movements. Drinking warm tea is also nice. And then dimming down all the lights, doing light reading, not any suspense or drama books, but just something lighthearted is nice. And then if you have to be on your device, where those blue light filter glasses, those are always helpful than that light hitting your face. But if you happen to wake up in the middle of the night because you got disturbed and now it's like 3 a.m., what do I do? The first thing is to calm your mind, right? So you can actually just do a quick meditation to see if you can get back into that parasympathetic mode. Or sometimes it's helpful if you just write things down that are in your head in the middle of the night, get a little light lamp and just start writing things down. Sometimes when you write it down on paper, it takes the mental stress off your brain, right? But if you do that for 30 minutes and you're like, oh, it's now 3:30. Again, that's one of the problems, because then you start staring at the clock and then the problem propagates itself, right? So So then you just get out of bed, and you, after 30 minutes of trying to fall asleep, you get out of bed and you switch to a different room, and maybe do some light reading or some stretching in minimal lighting, to see if that relaxes your mind as well. One of the things I see happening is people will wake up at 3 in the morning, and then they can't fall asleep. And then now it's 3:30, and now they're staring at the clock, right? And then it's 3:45, and then it's 4, and then it's 4:30, and pretty soon it's like 5 o'clock, and they're like, "Oh my God, I only have 90 more minutes of sleep before my alarm clock gets up, rings." And now they've added additional stress because now, they're wary of how much time they have left. And so that sets off a negative cycle, because you're just, contributing to this lack of sleep cycle by, what am I looking? What's the word I'm looking for here? By
Yes.
creating this drama in your head that, oh my God, I can't sleep.
Yeah.
And sometimes what can happen from that is you start to have a bad association with nighttime, right? If this happens night after night, then you start dreading going to sleep, because you're like, oh, this is going to be another night of me not being able to sleep. And so you can form these negative associations with your bed. You have this bad relationship. Like, whenever I get into bed, I can't sleep. And so that cycle repeats itself, and you keep telling yourself the same story. I can't sleep, I can't sleep, I can't sleep. And then pretty soon you can't sleep, right? So sometimes it's better just to get out of bed. If you can't sleep, you've tried it for 30 minutes, just leave your bed and go do something else in a different room that's quiet and with minimal lighting, and see if that helps you doing, again, it's the same, right? You're doing calm, quiet activities, essentially practicing sleep hygiene, again, in the middle of the night, to see if you can get yourself to sleep. There are supplements you can take to help you sleep. I don't like to recommend them, because they're great for one night, for 2 nights, but again, they don't get to the crux of why you aren't sleeping, right? And so people say, well, I can just take melatonin and everything should be fine. But then you're now dependent on melatonin to get you to sleep every night, right? And that's not the point of this. The point of this is to figure out why you're not sleeping. What is stressing you out? Why are you staying in this sympathetic nervous system mode that's preventing you from releasing your own internal melatonin in the first place?
Yeah, I love those suggestions, and I think one of the good ones that I could add to that mix is also trying to do a type of meditation that is scanning your body, and
Mm-hmm.
trying to just feel how your different parts of your body start
Mm-hmm.
having any kind of pain, because sometimes it's a very subtle pain that we have in any part of our bodies. And when
Mm-hmm.
we scan ourselves, when we are just go from head to toes, by
Mm-hmm.
the time you arrive to the toes, you
Yeah,
probably
you're
will fall
out.
asleep. Yes, you are out, and that's
Yeah.
it. And that
Mm-hmm.
allows you to relax. Also, writing, as you mentioned, journaling is
Yes.
really, really great. And I love that
Mm-hmm.
also, because all of those thoughts that you have in your mind, when you just
Mm-hmm.
put them into paper, you just
Mm-hmm.
feel relaxed, because you already have them there,
Right.
probably in a notebook right beside your bed, and that's it. That's
Yeah.
all you can do, because you cannot solve anything at that time. So
Yeah. And then
that's
another easy one is just deep breathing. And a lot of people forget to breathe. You're breathing, but you're not breathing from, your belly, right? It's very shallow breathing. And even just the act of breathing can really calm your nervous system down and help get you from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic nervous system. And the key to breathing, though, is that you want your exhale to be longer than your inhale. So I typically like to do, the 3-4-5, which is very famously known. Breathe in for 3 seconds,
Mhm.
hold for 4 seconds, and then breathe out for five, or a count of five. You don't have to time yourself, but breathe in for a count of three, hold for a count of four, and then breathe out for a count of five. And you just do that 3 or 4 times, and you'll be amazed at how calm you feel. And this applies to any situation, right? Not just sleep. You're in a stressed out work environment, or your kids are stressing you out. Just take a step back, get into a room, close the door in the bathroom, and just breathe. And it's just amazing the calming effect that can have, and something so simple.
Yeah. Thank you,
Yeah.
Nisha. Um,
The other thing that I think a lot of people miss is having a good night's sleep isn't just about your sleep hygiene right before you go to bed. You're actually setting yourself up for a good night's rest when you wake up first thing in the morning. So that actually starts upon awakening. And that's how you're setting your circadian rhythm, right? So a lot of people, when they wake up in the morning or when their alarm clock goes off in the morning, what do we do? Where's that snooze button, right? How can I hit that snooze button so that I can sleep another 10 more minutes? And in actuality, what you should be doing is just turning off that alarm clock. When your alarm clock rings, it's time to get up. And that's why you have it set at the time that it's set. And so just getting out of bed, and the first thing that I recommend doing is opening those curtains or opening the blinds and letting that sunlight hit your face. That is setting your circadian rhythm to say, oh, sunlight, time to wake up, time for the melatonin levels to go down, and time to get started with my day. And the one thing we haven't talked about is cortisol.
yeah.
And cortisol is such an integral part of sleep, actually, that it's actually it does the opposite. It's melatonin counterpart. And so when your melatonin levels are high at night, your cortisol levels should be low. And how do you get your cortisol levels low? Is by relaxing, because cortisol is the stress hormone. And in the morning, you want exactly the opposite. You want your cortisol levels to go up and the melatonin to go down. And it's called a cortisol awakening response. And that is essentially the response you need to have that energy in the morning to hit the ground running. And so opening the blinds, opening the curtains, letting that sunlight hit your face is telling your body, all right, melatonin needs to go down. Let's get the cortisol up and let's get going. So that's the first thing you can do in the morning. And then also do a little bit of stretching to get the blood flowing, because you've also been lying in one position for, 7, 8, 9 hours, right? So that's the first thing you can do. And then have a good breakfast. A lot of people skip on breakfast because they're running out of time and they just got to get out the door and got to get the kids ready and got to go. But breakfast is so important because you've been fasting all night long and you need to break that fast, right? Breakfast. And so starting your day with foods that are nutritious, and I don't mean just coffee, foods that are nutritious are going to give you the vitamins, the minerals, the protein that you need to have the energy to go on with your day. So you don't have a crash at, say, 11 a.m., because you're starving, right? And then when it comes to lunchtime, again, focus on a nutritious lunch. Eat things that have vitamins and minerals in it because you need those nutrients to fuel the rest of your day to avoid that 3 p.m. energy crash. And so a lot of people do have a 3 p.m. energy crash. And what do? They reach for a cup of coffee, right? They're like, oh, the coffee will get me through the rest of my day. But one of the problems with having that coffee at 3 p.m. is that it actually can stay in your system until bedtime. And I don't think a lot of people know this, but the half-life of caffeine is 5 to 6 hours, which means that if you have a cup of coffee at 3 p.m., at 9 p.m., you still have 50% of that caffeine in your system. And the quarter life of caffeine is 10 to 12 hours. So by midnight, you still have a quarter of 25% of that caffeine still left in your system. And if you're someone that's sensitive to stimulants, that's definitely not going to help you sleep, right? So the goal is to have enough energy with your meals and your nutrition to have to not do the 3 p.m. coffee. If you need coffee, have it by noon. And I'm picking on coffee here, but it's not just coffee. For some people, chocolates are a stimulant. So you might not realize that chocolate you have at 4 p.m. because it's, your 4 p.m. snack is actually hindering your sleep because the stimulants are still in your body when you're ready to go to bed. So just being mindful, listening to your body and seeing what foods are keeping you up and which foods are helping you sleep. And then having a late night dinner is also something that can hinder your sleep. So if you're having, ideally, you want to finish eating before about 2 to 3 hours before bedtime to give your body a chance to digest, right? If you're eating at 9 p.m. and then heading off to bed at 10 p.m., your body is so focused on digesting that meal that it's not focusing on sleeping. And so you want to give yourself enough time to digest the food, extract and absorb those nutrients from your food so that they can help you fall asleep at night.
Yeah, love that also because I think that also adjusting our meal times to
Mm-hmm.
this practice of sleep is just like synchronizing also those clocks, those internal digestive enzymes, so that they
Mm-hmm.
stop working. And as you know, well, digestion takes a lot of energy, and people
Mm-hmm.
also doesn't know that. They just think that, well, eating is an activity that they have to do because they have to nurture
Right.
themselves, but
Mm-hmm.
digestion absorbs a lot of energy. So if you
Mm-hmm.
really don't have the proper time, or at least those
Mm-hmm.
2 or 3 hours before bed, you are still processing a lot of food, a lot of the food and that's why you
Yeah.
are not able to fall asleep. And
Mm-hmm.
we all have also suffered that when we go to a party, or when we go to a reunion, whatever
Right.
it is, a gathering, we we eat later and
Mm-hmm.
we have problems to sleep that night because we drank something or we ate something very late at night, and we are still up and running. As you mentioned, that this sympathetic system is still on, and we need
Yes.
some time. So probably walking, if you have those kind of parties or things, and you ate something that was very late, probably just taking a walk and trying to accelerate a little bit that processing can
Yes.
help you sleep, I
Mm-hmm.
think. No. Finally,
Yeah.
to wrap up this
Mm-hmm.
sleep uh, master class, let's say, what can you tell people in terms of the hormones and all of these metabolic messengers that we have? Let's just mention insulin, for example, and I don't know any other that you want to mention that also is being helped by sleep.
Yeah, so hormones are definitely at play. You mentioned insulin. Insulin works closely with cortisol, which we talked about is the stress hormone. And and so again, if you're having meals too late, your insulin level is going up because it has to digest the food that you're eating, and so then that affects also the melatonin. The melatonin is like, oh, I guess we're not ready for me yet, so it's not my show. And then conversely, also, if you eat too early, your blood glucose levels could actually drop, at bedtime. And if that happens, again, your cortisol level is going to go up because it's like, oh, we don't have enough blood sugar to go around just in case there's an emergency. The cortisol level goes up to bring your blood glucose level up. So, the hormone connections are just, it boggles my mind when I think about how what the food you eat is related to, what hormones are being released to help you sleep, to help you de-stress. We just touched on some of the higher level ones, but I didn't even get into your thyroid hormone, which plays a role in how you're able to digest your food and affect your sleep quality. But there's the thyroid hormone, there's your sex hormones that also play a role, estrogen, testosterone, progesterone. they all have a role, and this is super important for women, especially during the time of menopause and perimenopause when your estrogen levels are initially higher because your progesterone levels are coming down, and progesterone actually helps you sleep. And so when you have a high state of estrogen, that's now going to affect your sleep. And so there's just so many different connections that we could dive into. But I think at the end of it, I think the way to really manage your sleep is to one, prioritize it, right? We don't put sleep at the bottom of the pile of our to-do list, because without sleep, the rest of it doesn't matter. We can't function with the rest of it. So sleep needs to now be at least in your top three, if anything, on your to-do list, good quality sleep. And then also to, focus on your stress levels as well around the time of sleep, and not doing high engaging activities when you want to go to bed. And then paying attention to your body and seeing what foods help you sleep versus not sleep. And everyone is different, and so it's hard to do a blanket for a blanket talk. But some people can metabolize caffeine better than others. Some people handle stimulants better. Some people handle dairy. Others, dairy bothers them, and if you have dairy or cheese before bed, that's going to affect how you sleep. And so knowing that if you are stressed out and you can't sleep, there's nothing wrong with you. It's actually your body's own mechanism working exactly the way it should be working. If you are stressed out, you shouldn't be sleeping. You should be on high alert. And so when you can't sleep, don't beat yourself up over it. It's a totally natural response to sleep, to not be able to sleep in a high stressed mode. And so, take that pressure off of yourself and just focus on de-stressing. And then if people want more tips, I have a free guide. You can find me on Instagram and send me a DM, and I'll send you a free sleep guide that goes over some of the things we talked about, as well as tips on getting better rest.
Thank you, Nisha, for all this masterclass of sleep. And we can make a part two and just talk
We
about
can 2 and 3, yes, for sure.
the nutrition, and then the hormones and sleep. So we
Yes,
can talk about that in one second episode for everyone. And
yes.
one thing that I would like to ask you is how can people contact you or look for you? And also I would put that on the notes of the episode. So just
Yeah.
say your
I have a website, livewellwithnisha.com, and Instagram is also a great way. I'm at livewellwith.nisha. And if you just want to follow me on Instagram, I'm always posting tips on how to sleep better and lower your stress. Because those two things can actually prevent chronic diseases more so than taking the medicines every day. It's those lowering the stress, getting good sleep. I think that's the key to being healthy and warding off cardiovascular disease and diabetes and all these other things that we're so concerned about. That this is the key.
thank you, Nisha, for
Thank you so much, David.
all of this knowledge. And we will discuss more on a next episode. Thank you everyone for listening. And of course, as usual, I remind you to interact with me in the social platforms. Just ask us questions for the next episode, for the next part, and also give me your reactions, your shares, and subscribe to the channel. And thank you very much for paying attention. We will listen to each other on our next episode. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.